We are going to gather images and create a clipping mask. So if you are Google imaging searches, totally fine. Vancouver skyline. Let's say that's what I'd like to start with. Be mindful that under tools, sorry, if you go into images first, under tools, you can choose the size and you're going to want it to be larger than, I would even go to 4 since we're printing this on such a large wall. And then under usage rights, labeled for non-commercial use with modifications. And then those are the ones you're allowed to use. So you need to do 2 things. You need to make sure it's not going to be blurry. So you have to change your image size to larger than 4 megapixels, sorry. And then you need to make sure that it's ethical. So labeled for non-commercial reuse with modifications, okay? So those are the ones you're going to use. Now, I see a lot of people often grab a photo and then save this. This is a thumbnail. You must go to view image to get the full picture, and then you're welcome to use that image. File new. So when we're creating our clipping mask, it's pretty good at remembering what you've clipboarded. So I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to paste in my picture. Clipping mask is done with the pen tool. So when you're creating your path, I'm just going to follow essentially the skyline. And I'm going to do just a little bit rougher just so we can do it fast for you guys. But you're going to follow essentially the building. So I'm just going to go really quickly for you so you can see what happens. So I'm spending all this care and it's going to be a perfect clipping. If you have a curve, and you find that the next curve is kind of limited, what you can do is always release the curve by clicking on that last dot and bringing it back in. Alt option lets you remove it. Alt option, okay? So if you find that the handlebar is in your way, again, Alt option, go over it, click right on it. So I'm just going to go really quickly. You guys are going to spend a lot more care making sure it's accurate. But for the purpose of this video, I could spend a long time tracing it and you would not want to watch it. So this is called a clipping mask because essentially when I get to the beginning, everything outside of my shaped pen tool will disappear, which if we actually trace this really well, could look like a really cool skyline of Vancouver on our mural, which is exactly what we were hoping for. Alright, so back to the beginning is right on that last dot. Now obviously nothing disappeared because we need to actually go into our window and open our path window. And there's our work path it created. So I'm able to select and make selection from that. How I got that path menu again was under window, path. How I got make selection was control click, make selection. If you think you did an awesome tracing job, leave it at 0. If you're like not so good, go around 5. If you're like really bad, go around 10 because it's such a large image. I'm just going to say 5 just so you can kind of get a preview. And then I'm back to my layer 1. I'm going to copy and paste that out. And there you go, I have just the skyline out. Now, this is where we use the path tool versus the lasso that you used in grade 7 because these aren't curves. Really important when you get into more intricate shapes, and especially if I was doing it really closely, you'd want the curves of the buildings wherever those curves existed, and you can't do that with the lasso tool. So that is how you create a clipping mask very quickly. So this image, to bring it into InDesign, I'm going to remove the background so it's transparent. I'm going to save as PNG or Photoshop file are both fine. I'm going to call it Skyline. And I clearly saved too fast. File, save as Skyline. And why does it disappear? File, save as Skyline. PNG, save. Okay. Now, when I go into InDesign, I'm able to make my layer or my skyline. I make my box where the skyline is going. I select Command D as in David, and I locate my Skyline PNG to add it to my awesome document. Remember, white cursor resizes the picture inside the picture frame, so white cursor will let you resize that. Otherwise it gets chopped out side of your frame. Alright, so there is my Skyline. Now, if you want to preview what it would print like, you go to View, Display, Performance, High Quality. The default is typical because it uses less RAM, but with that you'll often find a kind of a blurriness to it. So you just change it to high quality for a preview, but then go back to normal, typical when you're working on it because it requires more RAM. Okay? And I'm just going to call this my mural. And so each of your teammates are going to slowly add stuff into your mural to create your design. Good luck.